What is going on, Cowboys Nation? We are back with another film session, and I had to come in here and talk about Kenny Clark. This is a player that really stepped up in his first game with the Cowboys, and if this team is going to take that next step, this is the kind of player that you need in the trenches. And usually when you do have a player that can come in and be stout like this, it can bring the best out of everybody. And playing in these games in the NFC East, there's a lot of running, a lot of physical football, and that's exactly what this player is coming with. So let's break him down and see what he did against those filthy Eagles. So on this play here, one of the things I really like about Kenny Clark is he is not only physical, but he also keeps his eyes locked on the ball carrier, finding ways to clog lanes and force hesitation, making the runner second guess every step, and his combination of power and awareness is what makes him so effective at disrupting plays, and it is absolutely needed for that defensive tackle position, especially if this team is trying to get to where they want to go. So we go ahead and split it. So locking on this play here, just watching the power from Kenny Clark. One thing about this player, he is extremely physical. He loves to go out there and set the tone. So putting himself in position and peeking to that left side. And usually when you can be able to mirror a runner like this, it's going to force these guys to hesitate, especially with a player like Saquon Barkley because he is extremely athletic. But as you can see, Kenny Clark gives that guard a nice club move, flips his hips, and extends with that same left arm to go out there and get a key stop. And this is what you love to see when it comes down to that defensive tackle position, because a lot of these defensive tackles in the NFL, they're sloppy and they can get out of position quickly. And seeing this player using his hands well, keeping his body square, this dates back from his college days and the same thing that he has done throughout his career at Green Bay. And it's awesome to be able to see him come in here and actually go out there and get these reps in, because he was literally at it like a week ago. So that just shows this player's grit, his will, and determination. But as far as the entire defensive line, they were out of position on a lot of plays in the first quarter. They were overly aggressive, so these guys are going to have to be on the same page. But every time Kenny Clark was in his game, he was on top of it. And usually with that type of energy like that, it can potentially rub off on everybody on that defensive line. But great play by Kenny Clark, tracking down Saquon Barkley and getting a nice tackle. Here's a rep where Kenny Clark is holding his own in a gap, locking on to the guard and refusing to give up an inch. And with this kind of physical presence, it keeps the line from moving and it sets the table for Osa on the other side. And with Osa, you'll see him rip inside quickly and find a way to make another key stop. And as far as the entire defensive line as a whole, you gotta make it miserable for these quarterbacks, the running back, just finding ways to be able to finish these plays. And that's exactly what both of these guys did here. So we go ahead and run it. So locking on this play here, just studying Kenny Clark. It's so good to be able to see the physicality when it comes down to this talent, shocking that guard and absolutely controlling them. But keying in on Osa on this play, just seeing how he's just firing off on the ball and giving a nice rip. All it takes is half a second when it comes down to that defensive line. If you can be able to find a proper positioning, it is hard for these offensive linemen to be able to recover. So with him and Kenny Clark doing their job, Osa was able to slice through and make a nice stop. And it's the little things when it comes down to watching film. That's why I like to be able to slow this down and break it down so you guys can be able to understand it up close and personal. And he is one of those athletes that he not only brings the best out of defensive linemen, but the linebackers as well. And with the linebacker play with Sanborn, Kenneth Murray, they didn't play the best from what I saw on film, especially in that first quarter. But usually when you do have a stout defensive tackle like Kenny Clark, it'll be hard for these offensive linemen to climb to that second level. And that should allow these linebackers to scrape and roam sideline to sideline. So it will definitely be interesting to see if these linebackers can step it up in these upcoming weeks. And it's only the first game. You got new players, you got a new scheme, you got new coaches. It takes time, so we all got to be patient. But shout out to my guy, Patrick No C Walker. He made a post on Twitter saying that Kenny Clark had 5 tackles, 4 versus the run, and the entire defense gave up 2.8 rushing yards when he was on the field. But they gave up 6.6 yards when he wasn't. So it's amazing that this player is showing up like this and it's only been a week. And on top of that, there were a lot of good comments about him. So it's good to see that this player is off to a good start. So solid rep by Osa and Kenny Clark being on the same page and stressing out those guards. Now this right here, in my opinion, is Kenny Clark's bread and butter. the bull rush. You'll see him get his hands inside the guard quickly, driving this guy straight back with pure power, then disengages at the perfect moment and closes in on Jalen Hurts for the finish. And this definitely is this player's go-to move, and when the timing is right, it's almost impossible for the offensive lineman to be able to stop this. So let's run it. So locking on this play here, he's lined up outside that guard's left shoulder. They had him lined up on both sides, and he was effective going up against anybody in the interior. So you see that he's putting his weight down on that bull rush, forcing that left guard to hop back, and the center steps on his foot. And sometimes that does happen when it comes down to football. When you can be powerful like that, forcing him off of his spot, that bad step right there could end up being a world of difference. So he ends up disengaging. Marshawn Kneeland is there as well, another guy that actually had a good game, and Kenny Clark closes in for the cleanup. And these are the type of plays here that absolutely get me hyped when it comes down to the defensive line. I know a lot of us did not want to see Micah Parsons go, but we got to understand that the NFL is not for long. You have to continue to keep bringing in players, guys like Donovan Ezaraku, Marshawn Kneeland, Sam Williams, Fowler. The list goes on and on. It's a lot of talent at that edge, but they have to go out there and go prove it. But this is a talent here that has the ability to be able to pass rush. He can stop the run well. You can line him up at that nose tackle position, the one technique position on either side of the ball. The coaches will find ways for him to be physical, get into position, and impact these games. But seeing him using that bull rush, forcing that guard back, being stepped on, disengaging, and making a play right here was fireworks. Another thing that I saw from Kenny Clark in this past game against the Eagles is his nonstop motor. Even when the play isn't around him, he is going hard and playing to the whistle. Coaches pay attention to things like this on film, and that is why this player has made a big impact in the NFL. So let's run it. So running this play here, you see he's lined up across that guard. Both the center and guard got their hands on him, but he was able to keep the distance, keep his eye on Jalen Hurts, disengage, and make another tackle. And zooming in on his arms, you can just see that he's just giving good effort, just going out there and laying his body on the line for his team. And one thing that's really good about him, he's a leader on and off the field. He's a straightforward, great character kind of athlete, and somebody that could be the complete opposite of Micah Parsons. It ain't going to be no podcast when it comes down to this type of guy. He's coming in and he's ready to work. And as far as the Thursday night game, it seemed like that game lasted for about 5 hours. They didn't start off well on defense, but when that thunderstorm came, they came back as a better unit. Sometimes you need words of encouragement to get the ball rolling. And if they can't play like this, like they played in the second half, this is a defensive unit that can possibly make some noise, but they got to lock in and put it all together. Here's another rep of him finishing, roaming towards the sideline, and making a play. So locking on this play here, just studying Kenny Clark. It looked like he was blown off the ball. Usually you want to be able to keep your position. It won't be perfect on every rep. But you see with Saquon Barkley, he gets out into the perimeter. We all know that he is such a quick running back. But with Kenny Clark, he never gave up on his play and got in on that action. And sometimes when you do play with this kind of energy, with Saquon Barkley or any of these runners in the NFL, there are times where they will cough up the ball. And with Saquon, he rushed for only 60 yards. That is big time when it comes down to going up against him. But one thing that they have to clean up is keeping an eye on these quarterbacks and not allowing them to get those easy yards on scramble plays. Because if that does happen, it can absolutely be backbreaking to the defense. So that's a coaching thing. You might have to get spies for guys like Russell Wilson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. All of these quarterbacks in the division are athletic, so we have to make sure that we're on top of it. But another good high motor play by Kenny Clark here. Here's the last rep where Clark goes full throttle, finishing the play strong and making the tight end pay. So running this play here, you see that he's clashing inside again. The good thing about this player, he does have the ability to be able to beat double teams and keeping those offensive linemen busy. So as you can see, he uses a good spin move and quickly disengages from both of those offensive linemen, locking his eyes on the quarterback, the tight end, and taking off. So Jalen Hurts sees the pressure from Sam Williams, quickly throws it, and Kenny Clark was there for the cleanup again. And usually when you do have a player that just came in here that's showing good energy, you're saying all the right things, I think that this is one of those talents that's going to be here for a long time. Because he was one of those defensive tackles when we were playing Green Bay in the playoffs, we were game planning against him. So it's great to see that we have this dog with a star on his helmet. And as far as the Eagles' offensive line, they are one of the best in the entire league. Every week you won't be going up against guys like this, so I think that there's an opportunity for everybody on this defensive line to turn up. So on this final rep here, you'll see Kenny Clark disrupting run concepts again, using his arms well and sticking his nose in there to stop Saquon. If this player can bring this week in and week out, the sky is the limit for this team. So we go ahead and run it. So running this play here, you see that guard, he's pulling to the right. The center and tackle, they squeeze in and combo block. But just studying Kenny Clark, ripping his arm over and getting himself into the right position. And like we said on the clips before, if you can make that sudden movement, that could be the biggest difference on the play. Plugging up that middle and getting right to Saquon. And there he goes right there at the bottom. We love to be able to point this kind of stuff out just to see what this player is doing for the good and bad. But it's absolutely impressive to see that this player has really stepped up and having that true one technique, that space eater. Shout out to Vach and Brian Broaddus, who they call that trash can full of dirt. It is big time. And once we get into November, December type of football, when it's cold outside, they like to run a ball and be physical. And if you can't stop the run, that sets up play action, and that is something that you do not want. But with Kenny Clark, he is off to a great start, and there is no doubt about it. So it's going to be good to see how it all plays out this season. I'm so glad that we got a true space-eating defensive tackle. We got to find these players that can go out there and set the tone. And I don't give a dang about the Eagles. I'm still upset about what Jalen Carter did to my man Dak Prescott, but trust and believe we will get our get back on those guys for sure. But with this schedule, it will be competitive this year. So having Kenny Clark in here with all of the guys on defense, it might end up being more tougher with him versus Micah Parsons because this player is extremely physical and he can stop that run. But it's not going to just come down to him. Everybody on that edge, you got Osa, Solomon Thomas, who also had a good game. They have to lock in and get this thing done. And speaking of Solomon Thomas, we will be breaking him down on the next video, so make sure you guys tap in with me. So comment below and let me know what you guys think about Kenny Clark and who else do y'all want to see me break down just like this video. So make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe and hit that notification bell because the way the YouTube algorithm works, if you don't hit it, you'll miss on fire updates and the best football film sessions on YouTube. All right, Cowboys Nation, talk to y'all soon. Gone.